Jennifer Prescott, 34, was a part-time librarian with a warm smile and a penchant for floral dresses. Her husband, Nathaniel, 36, was a rising star at a nearby tech company known for his analytical mind and workaholic tendencies. To their neighbors, they seemed the perfect couple, young, successful, and deeply in love. But behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding, a story of unfulfilled dreams, growing resentment, and a desperate act that would lead to unimaginable consequences. Jennifer Prescott grew up in a small town in Vermont, the only child of a high school English teacher and a nurse. From an early age, Jennifer was drawn to books and the worlds they contained. She spent countless hours in the local library, losing herself in stories of romance and adventure. Her parents, loving but often preoccupied with their own careers, encouraged her quiet pursuits. As she grew older, Jennifer dreamed of a life filled with love and family, the kind she read about in her beloved novels. Nathaniel Prescott's childhood was markedly different. Raised in a bustling household in Hartford, Connecticut, he was the middle child of 5. His father, a successful corporate lawyer, instilled in his children a strong work ethic and an unwavering ambition. Nathaniel's mother, a stay-at-home mom, struggled to give equal attention to all her children. As a result, Nathaniel often felt overlooked, driving him to excel in school and extracurricular activities to gain recognition. Their paths crossed in the fall of 2010 at a mutual friend's housewarming party in Boston. Jennifer, then working as a librarian at a small private college, was immediately drawn to Nathaniel's confident demeanor and quick wit. Nathaniel, in turn, was charmed by Jennifer's quiet intelligence and genuine warmth. Their courtship was a whirlwind of romantic gestures and shared dreams. Nathaniel, newly employed at a promising tech startup, spoke of his ambitions to climb the corporate ladder. Jennifer shared her hopes of one day opening her own bookstore and starting a family. They seemed to complement each other perfectly, Nathaniel's drive balanced by Jennifer's nurturing nature. After a year of dating, Nathaniel proposed during a weekend getaway to Cape Cod. Jennifer, overjoyed, accepted without hesitation. They were married in a picturesque ceremony in the spring of 2012, surrounded by friends and family who celebrated what seemed to be a perfect match. The early years of their marriage were blissful. They purchased their home, a compromise between Nathaniel's desire to be close to the tech hub of Hartford and Jennifer's preference for a quieter, more community-oriented lifestyle. Jennifer took a part-time position at the local library, while Nathaniel threw himself into his work, quickly ascending the ranks at his company. They talked often of starting a family, both eager to fill their home with a patter of little feet. However, as months turned into years with no success, the strain began to show. Jennifer underwent a battery of tests, each negative result chipping away at her self-esteem. Nathaniel, uncomfortable with emotional displays, buried himself deeper in his work, leaving Jennifer to navigate the painful journey of infertility, largely on her own. As their 5th wedding anniversary approached, the cracks in their relationship were beginning to show. The once perfect couple was drifting apart, their shared dreams giving way to individual struggles and unspoken resentments. Little did they know, this was only the beginning of a much darker chapter in their lives. As Nathaniel's career flourished, the demands on his time increased exponentially. Late nights at the office became the norm, and weekends were often spent hunched over his laptop, fine-tuning presentations or troubleshooting code. His dedication was paying off. Promotions came quickly, along with generous bonuses and stock options. But success came at a price, and that price was paid in the currency of his marriage. Jennifer, meanwhile, found herself increasingly isolated. Her part-time work at the library provided some solace, but the quiet evenings at home grew longer and lonelier. She tried to engage Nathaniel in conversation about their fertility struggles, but he often deflected, citing work stress or fatigue. In truth, he found himself ill-equipped to handle the emotional weight of their situation. The turning point came in the spring of 2018. After another failed round of IVF, Jennifer fell into a deep depression. She took a leave of absence from the library, spending her days in a fog of sadness and disappointment. Nathaniel, unsure how to help and overwhelmed by his own feelings of inadequacy, retreated further into his work. It was during this period that Jennifer first noticed the changes in Nathaniel's behavior. The late nights grew later, and his explanations more vague. He began guarding his phone, angling the screen away when she entered the room. The cologne he wore seemed different, and there were unexplained charges on their credit card statement for restaurants they'd never visited. One evening in late April, as Nathaniel rushed out the door for another emergency at work, Jennifer caught a glimpse of a text message on his phone. The sender listed only as A had written, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Miss your touch." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Jennifer's suspicions, which she had been desperately trying to ignore, suddenly crystallized into a painful reality. She spent that night alternating between fits of angry tears and bouts of nausea, her mind racing with questions and accusations. When Nathaniel returned home in the early hours of the morning, Jennifer confronted him. Their argument was explosive. With years of pent-up frustration and resentment pouring out, Nathaniel initially denied the affair, but as Jennifer presented the evidence she'd gathered, suspicious texts, unexplained absences, the subtle changes in his behavior. His denials weakened. Finally, in a moment of exhausted honesty, Nathaniel admitted to the infidelity. He spoke of feeling disconnected, of the pressure of trying to conceive, of his inability to cope with Jennifer's depression. His words meant his explanation cut Jennifer to the core. In her mind, every reason he gave was another indictment of her failings as a wife. The following weeks were a blur of tears, recriminations, and tense silences. Nathaniel moved into the guest room, and they began a painful dance of coexistence. He spoke of his remorse, of his desire to repair their marriage. But Jennifer struggled to believe him. The trust once broken seemed impossible to rebuild. It was during this tumultuous time that Jennifer overheard a phone conversation between Nathaniel and his sister Olivia. Nathaniel spoke of his confusion, his guilt, and his uncertainty about the future of his marriage. The words that struck Jennifer like a physical blow were, "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Liv. Maybe it's time to admit it's over." As she listened, frozen in the hallway, a cold determination settled over Jennifer. She couldn't lose Nathaniel. He was her whole world, the future she had dreamed of since childhood. If a baby was what it would take to save her marriage, then a baby she would have. In that moment, driven by desperation and fear, Jennifer made a decision that would set in motion a chain of events leading to tragedy. She would fake a pregnancy, whatever it took. She would give Nathaniel the child he wanted, and in doing so, she would save their marriage. The consequences of this deception were far beyond anything she could have imagined. In the days following her overheard conversation, Jennifer's mind raced with possibilities. She knew that faking a pregnancy would be challenging, but her desperation outweighed any moral qualms or fears of discovery. She began to meticulously plan her deception, leaving no detail to chance. Her first step was to purchase a variety of pregnancy tests, carefully opening the packages and replacing the negative tests with positive ones she bought online. She left these strategically placed in the bathroom trash, knowing Nathaniel's curiosity would lead him to investigate. Next, Jennifer focused on creating a paper trail. She used her graphic design skills, honed through years of creating library event flyers, to forge ultrasound images and doctor's notes. She even went so far as to create a fake email account for a non-existent obstetrician, Dr. Amelia Thornton, through which she would communicate about her pregnancy. To explain her lack of physical changes, Jennifer researched and adopted the symptoms of a condition called placenta previa, which she learned could sometimes delay the appearance of a baby bump. She joined online support groups for pregnant women, absorbing their stories and experiences to make her own accounts more believable. The final touch was a series of pregnancy journals she began to leave around the house, filled with heartfelt entries about her joy, fears, and hopes for their child. She knew Nathaniel's guilt over the affair would prevent him from invading her privacy by reading them fully, but the mere presence of these journals would lend credibility to her story. With everything in place, Jennifer put her plan into action. One evening, as Nathaniel worked late in his home office, she called out to him, her voice trembling with carefully rehearsed emotion. She stood in the bathroom doorway, clutching a positive pregnancy test, tears streaming down her face. Nathaniel's reaction was everything Jennifer had hoped for. His face lit up with joy and disbelief. He embraced her, apologizing for his recent behavior and promising to be a better husband and father as he held her. Jennifer felt a mixture of triumph and guilt. She pushed away the nagging voice in her head that warned of the potential consequences, focusing instead on the warmth of Nathaniel's embrace and the hope that their marriage might be saved. That night, as they lay in bed together for the first time in weeks, Jennifer allowed herself to believe that her plan might just work. Little did she know. Her deception was only the beginning of a journey that would lead them both down a dark and dangerous path. As the weeks turned into months, Jennifer found herself trapped in an intricate web of lies. Every day brought new challenges, requiring quick thinking and careful manipulation to maintain her facade of pregnancy. She meticulously tracked the progression of a typical pregnancy, ensuring that her symptoms aligned with what would be expected at each stage. Morning sickness was easy enough to fake, and her natural power from stress and guilt passed for the glow of impending motherhood. She carefully patted her clothing to simulate a growing belly, gradually increasing the size to match her supposed progression. Nathaniel, true to his word, became the attentive husband Jennifer had always dreamed of. He attended every fabricated doctor's appointment, hovering protectively over Jennifer and asking Dr. Thornton endless questions about the baby's development. Jennifer's heart ate each time she saw the pride and joy in his eyes as he looked at the forged ultrasound images. Their friends and family were thrilled by the news. Jennifer's parents, overjoyed at the prospect of becoming grandparents, called almost daily for updates. Nathaniel's mother began sending hand-knitted baby clothes and thoughtful care packages. Each gift, each congratulatory message added to the weight of guilt Jennifer carried. As her supposed due date approached, the pressure intensified. Jennifer knew she needed a plan for the birth and subsequent explanation for the absence of a baby. She researched tragic stories of stillbirths and late-term miscarriages. Her heart breaking for the real women behind these accounts, she decided that a stillbirth would be the most believable explanation, allowing for the grief and recovery time she would need to sell her story. The strain of maintaining the lie began to take its toll on Jennifer. She lost weight. The dark circles under her eyes grew more pronounced, and she found herself jumping at small noises, constantly afraid of being discovered. Nathaniel attributed these changes to the stress of the pregnancy, especially given her fictional high-risk status due to the placenta previa. Despite the constant stress risk status due to the placenta previous. Despite the constant stress, Jennifer clung to the improvement in her marriage. Nathaniel was more present, more loving than he had been in years. They spent evenings planning for the future, discussing names and dreaming of the life they would build as a family. In these moments, Jennifer almost believed her own lie, allowing herself to imagine the child that would never be. However, cracks in her story began to appear. A chance encounter with a real obstetrician at a local cafe led to some awkward questions that Jennifer struggled to deflect. Nathaniel's sister, Olivia, a pediatric nurse, began to express doubts about some of the medical details Jennifer had fabricated. As the due date loomed closer, Jennifer's anxiety reached fever pitch. She knew that the moment of truth was approaching, and with it, the potential destruction of everything she had fought so hard to preserve. She began to withdraw, claiming fatigue and discomfort to avoid social interactions that might expose her lie. Nathaniel, interpreting her behavior as nesting instinct and pre-birth jitters, became even more solicitous. He took time off work to be with her, inadvertently increasing the pressure Jennifer felt to maintain her deception. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing, Nathaniel had installed for her comfort. He placed his hand on her padded belly and spoke softly to their non-existent child. Jennifer felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with her fictional pregnancy. The love in Nathaniel's voice, the gentle way he caressed her false bump, brought home the magnitude of her deception in a way nothing else had. In that moment, looking into her husband's eyes shining with love and expectation, Jennifer realized the full extent of the tragedy she had set in motion. She had created a child out of lies and desperation, and soon she would have to destroy it. The knowledge sat like a stone in her chest, a weight she knew she would carry for the rest of her life. As Jennifer's fabricated due date drew near, the carefully constructed facade began to crumble. The first crack appeared during a chance encounter at the local supermarket. Nathaniel bumped into his old college roommate, Garrett, who was now a resident at the nearby hospital, in the course of their conversation. Nathaniel proudly shared the news of Jennifer's pregnancy and their upcoming delivery with Dr. Thornton. Nathaniel's conversation with Garrett left him unsettled. When he mentioned Dr. Thornton, the OB/GYN supposedly overseeing Jennifer's pregnancy, Garrett expressed confusion, stating he didn't know of any doctor by that name at their hospital. Nathaniel initially dismissed Garrett's uncertainty, attributing it to a lapse in memory. However, the exchange planted a seed of doubt in Nathaniel's mind. As days passed, Nathaniel found himself increasingly preoccupied with the details surrounding Jennifer's pregnancy. He began to notice small inconsistencies in her accounts, discrepancies he had previously overlooked, and his enthusiasm and determination to be a more supportive husband. These subtle contradictions, once easy to ignore, now stood out to him, fueling his growing sense of unease. One evening, while Jennifer was in the shower, Nathaniel's curiosity got the better of him. He picked up one of her pregnancy journals, the ones she had conspicuously left around the house. As he leapt through the pages, his engineer's mind began to detect patterns. The handwriting seemed unnaturally consistent, as if all entries had been written in one sitting. The ink didn't show the fading one would expect over time. Uneasy, Nathaniel turned to the internet. He researched placenta previous, the condition Jennifer had claimed was responsible for her lack of visible pregnancy symptoms. The more he read, the more his suspicions grew. The severity of her supposed condition didn't align with her day-to-day activities, his doubts mounting. Nathaniel decided to dig deeper. He searched for Dr. Amelia Thornton online, but found no records of an OB/GYN by that name in their area. The website Jennifer had shown him for the doctor's practice now led to an error page. Nathaniel's unease grew into a gnawing suspicion. He began to pay closer attention to Jennifer's behavior, noticing her nervousness when discussing the pregnancy and her vague responses to specific questions about the baby's development. The final straw came when Nathaniel, under the guise of surprising Jennifer, attempted to contact Dr. Thornton's office to arrange a special 3D ultrasound as a gift. The disconnected phone number confirmed his worst fears as the reality of Jennifer's deception dawned on him. Nathaniel felt a maelstrom of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, and a deep, aching sadness. The child he had come to love, the future he had imagined, all of it was built on a lie. Jennifer, unaware of Nathaniel's discovery, continued her charade. She spoke excitedly about their upcoming appointment, the one where they would finalize the birth plan, but with each word, Nathaniel felt his anger and resentment grow. He decided to confront Jennifer but not immediately. He needed time to process, to gather his thoughts and evidence as he watched his wife move around their home, her padded belly a constant reminder of her deceit. Nathaniel felt a cold determination settle over him. He would uncover the full extent of her lies, and then he would end this facade once and for all. The tension in the Prescott household reached a breaking point. Jennifer, sensing Nathaniel's change in demeanor but unaware of its cause, became increasingly anxious. She doubled down on her performance, overcompensating with enthusiastic baby talk and exaggerated symptoms. As the confrontation loomed, neither Jennifer nor Nathaniel could have predicted the tragic turn their lives were about to take. The web of lies was unraveling rapidly, setting the stage for a showdown that would have devastating consequences for them both. On the evening of June 14th, 2023, the simmering tensions in the Prescott household finally boiled over. Nathaniel had spent the day gathering evidence of Jennifer's deception. Printouts of non-existent medical records, screenshots of the fake doctor's website, and a damning email from the hospital confirming that no Dr. Amelia Thornton had ever worked there. Jennifer, oblivious to the storm about to break, was in the nursery they had prepared, folding tiny onesies and humming softly to herself. Through 'em, painted a soft yellow with whimsical animal decals on the walls, was a testament to the future they had planned. A future built entirely on lies. Nathaniel confronted Jennifer in their home. His emotions, a turbulent mix of anger and heartbreak, as he observed her false pregnant appearance. He calmly but firmly demanded that she end the deception. Jennifer, caught off guard, initially feigned ignorance, but her facade crumbled as Nathaniel presented evidence of her elaborate hoax as the truth unraveled. Jennifer collapsed into a chair. Overwhelmed by the realization that her scheme had been exposed, she attempted to justify her actions, claiming she had done it to save their marriage after overhearing Nathaniel's conversation with Olivia. Her explanation only fueled Nathaniel's anger and disbelief. The confrontation escalated, with Nathaniel's carefully maintained composure giving way to outbursts of rage. He demanded answers, questioning how far Jennifer had planned to take the deception. In a moment of panic, Jennifer physically pushed Nathaniel away, causing him to stumble and hit his head on the dresser. The situation took a dire turn as Nathaniel lay unconscious, bleeding from the head. Jennifer, overcome with shock and fear, checked for signs of life. Finding a weak pulse, she faced a critical decision. The prospect of calling for help meant exposing all her lies and potentially losing everything. In a moment of desperation and self-preservation, Jennifer made another fateful choice. Unwilling to let this be the end of her carefully constructed world, with trembling hands, she began to straighten the room, erasing the signs of their confrontation. She wiped the blood from Nathaniel's head, dragged his unconscious body to the foot of the stairs, and then, in a final desperate act, she pushed him down. The thought of Nathaniel's body hitting the bottom of the staircase echoed through the silent house. Jennifer stood at the top of the stairs, her hand over her mouth, stifling a scream. What she had set in motion months ago with a simple lie had now culminated in this unthinkable act. As she dialed 911, her voice shaking as she reported her husband's fall, Jennifer knew that her life would never be the same. The web of lies she had woven had finally ensnared her, with consequences far more dire than she could have ever imagined. The wail of sirens pierced the quiet suburban night as emergency vehicles converged on 42 Willow Lane. Neighbors, roused from their evening routines, gathered on their front lawns, whispering and pointing as paramedics rushed into the Prescott home. The scene shifted to the interior of Jennifer and Nathaniel's home, where paramedics worked urgently to treat Nathaniel's injuries. Jennifer, seated on the bottom step, watched the frantic activity with a mix of shock and grief. When questioned by a paramedic about the incident, she recited her prepared story, claiming Nathaniel had fallen down the stairs while she was in the nursery. The arrival of police officers added another layer of tension to the situation as they began their investigation. Officer Reyna questioned Jennifer, who struggled to maintain consistency in her account. The officer's careful examination of the scene, including scuff marks on the wall near the top of the stairs, raised suspicions about the veracity of Jennifer's story. Despite Jennifer's desire to accompany Nathaniel to the hospital, the police insisted she come to the station to provide a formal statement. As she left her home, Jennifer noticed the nursery light still on, a poignant reminder of the future she had fabricated. At the police station, Jennifer's narrative began to crumble under scrutiny. The detectives' questions grew more incisive as they presented conflicting evidence, including neighbors' reports of shouting before the incident and crime scene findings inconsistent with an accidental fall. Jennifer found herself trapped in a web of her own making, her carefully constructed lies threatening to expose the truth of what really happened that night. Hours into the interrogation, exhausted and overwhelmed, Jennifer's resolve crumbled. The truth spilled out: the fake pregnancy, the confrontation, the push that sent Nathaniel falling. As she confessed, Jennifer felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. Meanwhile, at Hartford Hospital, a grim-faced doctor delivered the news to Nathaniel's family. Despite their best efforts, Nathaniel Prescott had succumbed to his injuries. The fall had caused severe head trauma and internal bleeding. He had never regained consciousness. The news of Nathaniel's death hit Jennifer like a physical blow as the detective read her rights and officially placed her under arrest for manslaughter. The full weight of her actions came crashing down upon her. In the span of a few short hours, Jennifer had lost everything: her husband, her freedom in the future she had so desperately tried to fabricate. As she was led to a holding cell, her padded belly a final mocking reminder of her deception. Jennifer realized that her desperate attempt to save her marriage had cost her everything she held dear. The quiet Connecticut suburb, once a picture of domestic tranquility, was left reeling from the tragedy. The Prescott home, so recently filled with hopes and dreams of a growing family, now stood empty, a silent testament to the destructive power of lies and desperation. The investigation into Nathaniel's death was thorough and swift. Forensic teams combed through the Prescott home, collecting evidence that painted a damning picture of Jennifer's actions. The fake pregnancy paraphernalia, forged medical documents, purchased positive pregnancy tests, and a collection of increasingly large padding. Were all cataloged as evidence of her elaborate deception. Jennifer's initial claim of an accidental fall quickly fell apart under scrutiny. The blood spatter analysis, combined with Nathaniel's injuries, clearly indicated that he had been pushed with considerable force. The discovery of his blood on the nursery dresser further corroborated the theory that the fatal confrontation had begun upstairs. As news of the fake pregnancy spread, the community's sympathy for Jennifer evaporated. Friends and neighbors who had celebrated her impending motherhood now felt betrayed and foolish. Nathaniel's family, already devastated by his death, were left grappling with the added pain of Jennifer's deception. The prosecution built a strong case against Jennifer, charging her with second-degree manslaughter. Her tearful confession, while providing context for her actions, did little to mitigate the severity of the charges against her. The trial, which began 6 months after Nathaniel's death, captivated the local community. The prosecution painted Jennifer as a manipulative woman who had gone to extreme lengths to trap her husband, ultimately resorting to violence when her lies were exposed. The defense, in turn, portrayed her as a desperate woman driven to extremes by her fear of losing her marriage and her unfulfilled desire for motherhood. Witnesses were called to testify about the Prescott's seemingly perfect relationship and Jennifer's apparent joy over her pregnancy. Each piece of evidence revealing her deception elicited gasps from the courtroom gallery. Nathaniel's sister, Olivia, provided emotional testimony about her brother's excitement over becoming a father and her own growing suspicions about Jennifer's claims. After 2 weeks of testimony and 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict. guilty of manslaughter. The judge, citing the premeditated nature of Jennifer's deception and the tragic outcome of her actions, sentenced her to 15 years in prison. As Jennifer was led from the courtroom, no longer wearing the maternity clothes that had been her disguise for so long, she caught a glimpse of Nathaniel's family. The pain and anger in their eyes was a stark reminder of the lives she had destroyed with her lies. The aftermath of the trial left the community changed. Neighbors eyed each other with newfound suspicion, wondering what secrets might be hiding behind their friends' carefully maintained facades.